Hello. This is the Bible in fewer words. We are Carol and Steve Wells. This is episode 158, 2 Chronicles, chapters 17 through 36. If you enjoy this podcast and the Skeptics Annotated Bible website, consider supporting us at patreon.com/BFW. And consider following us on this podcast. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Carol.
What are we doing today?
We're going to finish 2 Chronicles.
Yes, I love it when we finish a book.
Especially the books of Chronicles, both 1st and 2nd, are kind of tough to read through.
Yeah, that's why we're not doing it.
Yeah, we're skipping most of it because it's stories that have already been told.
And our listeners, they know the drill.
Well, if they've listened to the podcast,
Uh-huh.
they'll be familiar with the stories that we're leaving out because they've already been told, so we're not going to tell them again. And so we'll talk a little bit at the end of the episode about what's being left out, and we'll cover those.
Great. So, let's get started.
Okay. We're going to skip the first two chapters, 17 and 18.
That's a good start.
And then we've got something from chapter 19.
When Jehoshaphat returned to Jerusalem, Jehu the seer went out to meet him and said, "Should you help the ungodly and love those who hate God? Because you have done so, the wrath of God is upon you. Still, there are two good things about you. You've removed the groves and have prepared your heart to seek God." This is Jehu talking to Jehoshaphat.
Yeah, we've had two Jehus. Jehu the prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Jehu the seer is also sometimes called prophet, same guy.
Yeah.
And we also had a king named Jehu.
Yeah. Have we seen Jehu the prophet before, though?
Yeah, he showed up just briefly
Okay.
to talk about the bad stuff that God was going to do to Ahab and his descendants. And now he's talking about Jehoshaphat, and what he's complaining about here is that he was more tolerant toward the ungodly than he should be, right?
Uh-huh.
He's saying, should you help the ungodly and those who hate God? And because you've done so, God's wrath is upon you.
Yeah.
So he's telling them, don't
You're in
be
trouble.
don't be nice to those ungodly non-believers or whatever.
Yeah. And those ungodly non-believers are the people who worship Baal.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Baal and his folks are still around.
Yeah, but it also, I think it would apply even to believers today,
Mm-hmm.
that Jehu the seer is speaking for God and saying, don't be nice to people who believe differently than you.
Yeah.
Should you love those who hate God?
Yeah, I guess not.
Yeah. So that was Jehu the seer,
Okay.
not Jehu
The
the
king.
king, which is barely mentioned in 2 Chronicles.
Really? So
Yeah.
the chronicler didn't want to repeat those stories.
Yeah, that's right. Remember those stories? There were several episodes that
yeah.
involved just Jehu
Yes.
killing one.
Group after
Yeah.
another.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, all of the Jehu killings, the 70 heads and 2 baskets, that wasn't there. The long series of killings that we had
Yeah.
in 2 Kings is all left out. Chapter 20, verse 1. Some messengers came to Jehoshaphat and said to him, "A large multitude is coming to attack Judah." This frightened Jehoshaphat, so he proclaimed a fast throughout Judah. He gathered everyone in Judah together. Then he said to God, "Help."
That's a good thing to say to God.
If you notice that his help is actually verses 6 through 12.
Oh, yeah. A lot of help.
So it's a long speech, but basically the idea is he gathered everybody together, declared a fast, and asked God to help.
Uh-huh. I'm trying to imagine what 6 verses of help could be.
Oh, it's pretty boring stuff. Yeah,
Okay.
It basically is help.
Again, thank you.
Uh-huh.
The Spirit of God came upon Jahaziel, the son of Zechariah, the son of Benai, the son of Jael, the son of Mattaniah, a Levite of the sons of Asaph.
I just wanted to make sure you knew who we were talking about here.
Specifically, who said to everyone in Judah, "Don't be afraid of this great multitude. This isn't your fight. It's God's."
Early the next morning, God forced the children of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir to kill each other. When the people of Judah went up in the watchtower, they saw nothing but dead bodies.
Ouch.
Yeah.
People go up in towers to see if there are fires miles and miles away.
Yeah, I've often wondered whether the Watchtower magazine took its name from this verse when they went up in the Watchtower.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So, Steve, I'm a little confused here.
Yeah.
What we've got is some messengers saying, hey, it's a bunch of people coming to attack Judah.
Right.
And then Jehoshaphat is kind of freaking out, and he asks God to help him. And then the Spirit of God came upon this guy, Jahaziel.
Yeah.
And he says to everybody in Judah, hey, don't worry about this great multitude. This isn't your fight, it's God's.
Yeah.
And then the next morning they wake up and all these people from the great multitude are dead.
That's right.
As far as they can see from the watchtower.
God forced that great multitude, all those armies,
to kill
each other.
Each other,
Yeah.
not themselves.
Well, kill each other.
Yeah.
Maybe some of them killed themselves. Yeah.
So Jehoshaphat and the people of Judah stripped riches and precious jewels from the bodies. Oh, it took 3 days to gather the spoil, and they still couldn't carry it all away.
Jehoshaphat was like his father Asa, who did right in God's sight. But he didn't take away the high places, and he later joined with Israel's wicked king Ahaziah.
You mean like they joined forces together,
think so.
or in heaven or hell or wherever
No,
they are
I
suffering?
think he joined up with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was chapter 20.
Mm-hmm.
And an interesting story we hadn't heard before.
Right.
Okay, chapter 21. Jehoshaphat died, and his oldest son, Jehoram, became king of Judah.
When Jehoram became king, he killed his brothers and some of Israel's princes.
So that's like his competition. He didn't want them to kind of kill him so they could become king.
Yeah, I think so.
He was wicked, like the kings of Israel. He even married one of Ahab's daughters. Ooh.
He made high places in the mountains of Judah, and he caused the inhabitants of Jerusalem to commit fornication.
All right. This guy's in trouble. Elijah wrote to him saying, because you're not like your father or grandfather, and you made Judah go a-whoring, and you killed your brothers, a great plague will smite your people, children, wives, and everything you own. And you will have a great sickness of your bowels until your bowels fall out. Well, that's a nice visual.
God stirred the Philistines and Arabians against Jehoram, and they came to Judah and carried away Jehoram's sons, wives, and possessions. Only his youngest son, Jehoaz, remained.
Then God smote Jehoram's bowels with an incurable disease.
Until finally, after 2 years, his bowels fell out and he died.
All right, well, that's a good bedtime story for our children.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've never heard those before.
Yep. Now, in chapter 22, we do have Jehu show up, King Jehu.
Oh.
And he kills Ahaziah and his relatives. So there is the one killing that that's kind of the only thing that we have from the Second Chronicles that mentions it. But it's a relatively short story compared to being the main character that Jehu was in 2 Kings.
Yeah, and it sounds like it was in line with all of other Jehu's activities. Like, oh, this was a killing. Oh, this was another killing. Oh, and here's another killing. Right?
Yeah. In 2 Kings, Jehu does kill Ahaziah. So one of Jehu's killings is being retold in 2 Chronicles.
Okay.
But it was a long series of killings with a great deal of detail.
Yes.
That's all left out of 2 Kings, except for this one chapter.
Yeah.
Which we're going to leave out because we've already covered it.
Yes. Okay, so chapter 24.
Yeah, this didn't occur in
Okay.
2 Kings.
Verse 20. The Spirit of God came upon Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, and he said, this is what God says.
Because you have forsaken me, I have forsaken you.
So the people stoned him with stones, as they were commanded to do by King Joash.
As Zechariah died, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I'm joking. He didn't say that. That was somebody else. No, he said, may God punish you for this.
Oh, okay. That's different.
Something entirely different, right?
Yes. So
Yeah.
that was as Zechariah died.
That's what he said as Zechariah died. And I was making a reference here, of course, to what Jesus supposedly said when he was killed.
On the cross.
Yeah, but Jesus does mention Zechariah.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Do you remember what he says?
Oh, he was talking about how this generation, the generation he was dealing with there, was the most evil generation that ever existed. They were responsible for all the killings, all the way from Abel to the stoning of Zechariah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we'll cover that later when we get to the Gospels.
So, verse 23. Later that year, the Syrians came to Jerusalem and destroyed the princes of Judah, taking the spoil to Damascus. The Syrian army was small, but God delivered Joash's large army into their hands. So God executed judgment against Joash.
Yeah, because Joash was telling the people to stone Zechariah.
Yeah.
So he got his in the end there.
All right. So
now we have like 12 chapters or something coming up here.
Yes.
None of which we're going to include because we've already talked about them.
I love it when you say that, honey.
Yeah, so we're all done really with Second Chronicles.
But weren't there some things that maybe were left out there?
Well, we've already mentioned that fact that there's a lot of stuff left out of Second Chronicles. In fact, I have a list at the website for this podcast page of 41 different Bible stories that were completely left out of Second Chronicles.
Really?
They're in Second Kings, but they're left out of
the second half of Second Chronicles or of all of Second Chronicles?
Right. So there's more than 100 stories in the books of Samuel and Kings that are left out of First and Second Chronicles.
By the chronicler?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember what some of those awful ones were. Oh, I know. Some prophets laying down on dead boys. Is that something that was left out?
Those were interesting stories, weren't they? Yeah, Elijah and Elisha both had their dead boy incidents. Where they laid down and they put their mouth to their mouths and their hands and...
Oh, okay. This is made for general audiences.
Anyway, it worked.
Yeah, they revived those two boys.
They did, yes.
Great.
So there was that. And then do you remember anything when Elisha took over from Elijah? Soon after that, he was walking along.
Walking along and...
minding his own business.
Yeah, and Elisha saw some little kids and they said, hey, you have a bald head.
Yeah.
And they said, I'm going to get you guys.
Yeah, he cursed them in the name of the Lord.
Uh-huh.
And God sent two bears to rip apart the 42 children. That's not in Second Chronicles. He left that out for some reason.
For some reason.
Yeah. And let's see, some other things. When... Elijah had this contest between the prophets of Baal and Elijah.
Yeah, and they wanted to see who was the real God.
Yeah, so they put all this wood on the altar, and then you doused it with water.
Like camping, and it rained overnight, and you just can't get your campfire going.
Yeah, exactly like that. And so Baal's prophets, all 450 of them,
could not start a fire.
They couldn't, but Elijah could, because he had God's help.
And a big lighter.
I don't think he had the lighter. I think he did it without any matches or anything.
Yeah, just spontaneous combustion.
Yeah. Yeah, so God started it for him.
And God was the winner of that contest.
All the prophets of Baal died because they lost that contest. There was a thing about Hezekiah. He had boils and Elijah cured him with figs. Mm-hmm. And then he wanted to know if he's going to be cured. And so he was kind of cured with this boil. But he still didn't know if he's going to live. So he said, how am I going to know? He said, well, what would you like him to do? Would you like him to move the sun forward or the sun backwards 10 degrees? So Hezekiah said, I'll move it backwards 10 degrees. So he did that.
Because that's ridiculous.
So there's another 40 or so stories, equally interesting stories that are left out of Second Chronicles. Right. And so what is the reason to have it in the Bible?
I have no idea.
I don't either, really, because... the stories have already been told, so why tell them twice? It's a source of a lot of contradictions. I don't include them in the podcast, but if you go to the website, you can see that there's a lot of contradictions because when stories are told twice in the Bible, that's a dangerous thing.
Yes.
Like witnesses contradicting each other at a trial, that's a problem. And here, it's a source of contradictions. So why include it?
And when witnesses are in the courtroom
Uh-huh.
and they contradict each other,
Yeah.
they've all sworn on the Bible.
Yeah. So why would we expect them to tell the truth?
I don't know.
Yeah,
The
that's a
Bible
good
is
point.
riddled with contradictions.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's a good question. There are some news stories about, in the last episode, we had the story of the 1,000,000 Ethiopians that were killed.
Yeah.
That wasn't in 2 Kings or 1 Kings. So there are a few news stories, but it doesn't seem worth it on the whole.
No.
It kind of shows that because the chronicler was disgusted by a lot of the stories in 1 and 2 Kings, I can see why the chronicler wrote what he wrote. It was to clean up the things that he could not accept from books of Samuel and Kings.
Yeah.
So it's a cleaned up version. He was thinking, this is going to be the book that people are going to read.
That's right. This will replace.
It's going to replace it. I think
books of Samuel.
he intended it to replace the books of Samuel and Kings.
But that's why.
But that's just a guess. But that still doesn't explain why the Jews and the Christians kept it in the Bible. I would have kicked this out if I were them. Because it just causes too much embarrassment and it provides very little benefit.
Or kick out 2 books of Samuel and 2 books of Kings and have this in there.
Yeah, that would probably be a better way. Because most of the stories that are left out are stories you really don't want to include.
No. If you and I were writing a Bible, we would not include those.
Not if we were trying to make God look good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We're digging ourselves in pretty deep here.
Well, at least we're done.
Yes, we are. Okay. That's great. No more Chronicles.
No more Chronicles.
What's next?
Oh, yeah. Ezra.
Ezra. I kind of like that name.
It is a nice name. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not a very good book, though.
Okay.
But it's a short book.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, thanks so much, Steve.
Sure.
Bye, listeners.
Bye-bye.